These grapes are perfectly healthy, and every summer, French farmers cut them off the vine and leave them on the ground. The ground they land on costs more than $2 million an acre. The priciest vineyard land in Napa doesn't come close. And French law puts a hard limit on how much wine this land is allowed to sell, no matter how much it grows. Meanwhile, French farmers have applied to tear 69,000 acres of vineyard out of the ground, and the state is paying for it. This is not diseased fruit, and it is not a mistake. The clusters are healthy. They are cut in the middle of summer and left in the dirt to shrivel. The ground beneath those grapes is the most expensive vineyard land in France. No pest did this. No storm, no disease, no bad harvest. French farmers walk their own rows and cut their own crop off the vine. And they will do it again next summer and the summer after that. So why would farmers destroy their own crop on ground worth that much? The answer is a chain of sacrifices. It starts with these grapes on the ground and ends with excavators. Over 600 years ago, a Duke of Burgundy banned a grape. Gamay grew well on this hillside, and it was generous. Pinot Noir gave less and was harder to grow. Pinot Noir is the one that stayed. This hillside is cut into more than 1,000 named parcels. Burgundy calls them climates. UNESCO made this a World Heritage Site in 2015, and the listing includes the city of Dijon, because UNESCO says Dijon is the political and regulatory power that created the climates. None of this came out of the soil, it came out of a rule. And the idea behind that rule, that a vine must struggle on thin, stony ground to be worth anything, is not a scientific finding. Scientists still argue about it. It is a belief written into law. In March 2026, one bottle from this hillside sold at auction for $812,500. No bottle of wine has ever sold for more. And once, all of this almost disappeared. The law's first move isn't about how much wine you sell. It's about how many vines you're forced to plant. The law demands at least 3,600 vines packed into every acre, more than double what southern France plants. Every one of those vines has to be bought, grafted, planted, and pruned by hand. So doubling the vines doubles the cost of everything before a single grape is grown. The rows are packed so tight that ordinary machines can't fit. The vineyards run on narrow-gauge tractors built to straddle a single row. That old belief, that a vine has to struggle to be worth anything, isn't just an idea here. It's a hard number the law forces into the ground. There's one job in this vineyard the growers refuse to fully hand to a machine. A pre-pruning machine tears through the rows and strips the old canes in seconds. But a person still walks behind it, cutting the last few buds by hand. Because that final cut decides how many buds are left, and how many buds are left decides how much fruit the law will let this vine carry. And if you kneel at the base of any vine, you'll find a strange swollen knot in the wood. Remember that knot. It hides the oddest fact in this entire story. In the middle of summer, the growers walk the rows and cut off part of their own healthy crop and leave it on the ground to die. This is the green harvest. They cut off their own healthy crop on purpose. It's the first thing they sacrifice for every bottle. Growers will tell you fewer grapes make better wine, but scientists still argue. And if it were really true, farmers would do it on their own, no law needed. So they throw away part of the crop on purpose, and then spend fortunes defending the few grapes they keep. On a single freezing night, they light thousands of wax candles between the rows, fire up giant wind machines, and send helicopters skimming the vines to push the frost away. And the rulebook for the most expensive of these vineyards contains one short, absolute sentence: irrigation is forbidden. No matter how hot or dry the summer gets, not a single drop of water is allowed. The vine gets what the sky gives, and not a drop more. This isn't a grower choosing to make things harder. It's the law taking away the easy way out. So far, everything forces the vine to give less. But one thing about these vines was never a choice. Remember that swollen knot at the base of every vine? Its story begins with a disaster. In the 1860s, a tiny insect arrived from North America and destroyed most of the vineyards in France. The only cure was to graft French vines onto American roots, the one kind of vine the insect couldn't kill. Today, that graft is made by machine. A blade cuts an interlocking notch shaped like the letter omega, joining two different plants in under a second. The joint is dipped in wax and warmed near 80 degrees for 2 weeks until the two plants heal into one. So every French vine now stands on American roots. That knot at its base isn't one plant, it's two, stitched together by hand. Fewer grapes, a higher price. And so far, it's the grower choosing to cut. But the deepest cut isn't made by any grower. It's written into the law itself. So far, the grower chose what to give up. Now the law takes the decisions out of their hands, starting with a race against the clock. A wine grape is unusual. The moment it's picked, it stops changing. It will never get any sweeter, ever again. So the sugar you pick is the sugar you keep. And the window when it's exactly right lasts only a few days across the whole vineyard. Crews test the sugar every couple of days, watching for the exact moment, and when it hits, the entire crop has to come off almost at once. When a whole vineyard has to be picked in days, there's an obvious answer: a machine that never sleeps. This is a self-propelled harvester. A machine that drives itself down the row, straddling the vines, and shakes the grapes off faster than any human crew alive. Rows of flexible rods beat the vine from both sides, knocking the ripe grapes loose, while conveyors catch them and fans blow the leaves away. Clean fruit in one pass. And it runs at night, under floodlights, when the fruit is cold and firm. A single machine clearing acres while the whole valley sleeps. One of these machines costs about $280,000, but it replaces dozens of pickers, works around the clock, and never gets tired. On paper, it's the perfect way out. So here's the strange part. In the most expensive vineyards in France, using that machine is against the law, the most advanced machine in the entire vineyard, and it's banned. In 2011, a single sentence was added to the rulebook of a handful of Burgundy's most valuable vineyards, and it quietly outlawed the harvester. The draft from the year before had said nothing about it, just a flat line, no special provision. Then, in the final version, a sentence appeared that wasn't there before. It read, "The wines are made from grapes harvested by hand." From that moment, running a machine through these rows was against the law. And here's the part that stops you. This rule wasn't forced on the growers from above. The owners of these vineyards asked for it themselves. They didn't want the cheaper, faster option to exist, because the harder the wine is to make, the rarer it stays. So they wrote the difficulty into law. The law doesn't just control how the grapes are picked. It sets a hard ceiling on how many can hang on the vine in the first place. Each acre is capped at a set weight of fruit, and inspectors walk the rows before harvest, counting the clusters on the vines to make sure no one goes over. And this answers something from the very start. Remember the healthy grapes they cut off and left on the ground to rot? It turns out that wasn't only about quality, It was the law, cutting the crop down to fit under a legal ceiling. But that raises an obvious question. If the vines grow more than the law allows, and they often do, what happens to all the extra wine? The extra wine can't be sold under the vineyard's famous name. By law, it has to be handed over and distilled into industrial alcohol. Not fuel for the grower, not a cheaper second label. Industrial alcohol, the kind that goes into cleaning products, and the grower is paid nothing for a single drop. So why would anyone destroy finished wine and take nothing for it? Because this is the second sacrifice. After the grapes, the wine itself. The law would rather see the wine destroyed than let too much of it exist. Because the moment there's more, it's worth less, and scarcity is the whole point. Every grape they cut, every drop they destroy, protects one fragile thing, that this wine stays rare, and rare stays wanted. But what happens the day the world stops wanting it? For now, though, it's working. The grapes that survived all of this, the cutting, the counting, the law, arrive at the winery, where scarcity becomes a price. And the first thing you notice is what they don't do. The grapes are never washed, because the dusty bloom on the skin is wild yeast, the invisible living thing that turns juice into wine. Wash it off, and you wash away the wine itself. So they refuse even to wash it, to keep the wine tied to this exact soil in a way no other place can copy. Everything here exists to protect that. They won't wash the grapes, but they will strip out every stem, because one stem left in can turn a whole batch bitter. What happens next is almost surgical. The berries pour onto a line watched by cameras and infrared, scanning every single grape as it flies past. In a fraction of a second, the software spots a berry that's underripe or damaged, and a precise burst of air blasts it off the line before it can reach the wine. Thousands of grapes a minute, judged one by one, an obsession with perfection that exists for a single reason: to keep this wine flawless and rare. The berries move into the press, and this is where the smallest mistake can undo everything. The rollers have to squeeze just hard enough to free the juice, but never hard enough to crack the seeds, because a crushed seed leaks harsh, bitter tannin into the wine. One setting too tight across an entire harvest, and a wine worth a fortune becomes worth nothing. So the whole system is built to be gentle, and gentle can't be scaled, which is exactly what keeps it rare. This is the least controllable stage of all. The wild yeast from those unwashed skins works on its own terms, and a whole tank can still turn and be lost. As it ferments, the skins rise into a thick crust on top, and it has to be pushed back down again and again, day after day, to draw color and structure from the skins. For centuries, that job was done barefoot, workers climbing into the vats to tread the cap down by foot. Today, a tool does it, but the idea hasn't changed. From the tanks, the wine goes into oak barrels, and the barrel is nearly as rare and costly as the wine inside it. The wood comes from French oak trees, 150 to 200 years old, split by hand so the grain stays sealed and won't leak. The staves are bent over an open flame and slowly toasted by fire, the heat shaping the wood and deciding what it will give the wine for years to come. A single one of these barrels can cost well over $1,000, and it holds only about 300 bottles. Even the container is built to keep the wine rare. After all of this, the most famous of these vineyards produces only 5,000 to 6,000 bottles a year, from under 5 acres of ground. and a single old bottle from that ground sold in 2026 for $812,000, the most anyone has ever paid for a bottle of wine. It's worth that much because only about 600 bottles of it were ever made, and the old vines that made it are long gone. It can never exist again. That is what everything in this room is for. Every cut, every rejected grape, every barrel bent over fire, all of it exists to protect one thing: that what goes into the bottle stays rare. Remember the question hanging over all of this: what happens when the world stops wanting what's rare? In France, that day has already come. The French drink 60% less wine than they did in the 1960s, down to about 11 gallons a person a year, and still falling. And the world now makes more wine than it drinks. Millions of gallons that nobody buys, piling up with nowhere to go. In one French wine region, the surplus got so bad that finished wine was selling for about 25 cents a bottle's worth, cheaper than the bottle it would go in. So, growers pumped it straight into the sewer, enough wine to fill more than 100,000 bottles running into the drains. At the start, grapes were cut and left to rot, destroyed before they ever became wine. Now the wine itself is being poured down the drain. But they didn't just stop making wine. The French state chose something far more drastic. It's now paying growers to tear their own vineyards out of the ground. In a single year, French growers applied to rip out 69,000 acres of vineyard, and the government put up over $100 million to help them do it. This is where it ends. Not the grapes, not the wine, the vines themselves. Decades-old plants dragged out of the earth by machines, roots and all. And this is the truth the whole story has been building to. Scarcity was never a side effect. Scarcity was the product. For centuries, the market made that scarcity on its own. Now that the world wants less, the state has to manufacture it by force, with public money and with excavators. But there's one last thing the excavators reveal, and it changes everything you just watched. The vineyards being ripped out of the ground are not the famous, priceless ones. They're the ordinary regions, the everyday wine nobody's buying anymore. In the very same year, the most prestigious vineyards hit record-high prices, while in Bordeaux, vineyard land fell 24%, the fourth straight year of decline. The gap between them is now more than 30-1. Same country, same fruit, same year, and one is worth 30 times the other. Because growing less only pays off if your wine is already worth a fortune. For everyone else, less wine just means less money. So these vineyards weren't torn out for farming wrong. They were torn out because they weren't rich enough to grow less. The most expensive vineyards on earth didn't get there by growing the best grapes. They got there by destroying them and making sure almost no one else could afford to. If this changed how you see a bottle of wine, subscribe to the channel for more stories behind the world's most valuable crops.